Recording now. All right. So first off, hello everybody. And first thing I want to do is we're going to give you our quick sales pitch. So both Amira and I have programs we're offering, which is one of the primary reasons we're giving out this free content. So my particular program deals with sexual energy cultivation. So for those individuals, predominantly men, but women can also utilize this program in order to sort of cultivate this energy. In a lot of ways, it's like a energetic reset. And that's the function of the techniques that I offer through this particular program. So again, you can check out the link I have down below the video. And for Amira, ask Amira, her program is actually very much focused on sane and sexy relationships, a comprehensive guide to emotional, mental, and spiritual wellness. So do you have a few things you want to say about that really quickly, Amira?
So mostly it just deals with your inner work and how to communicate, how to do conscious dating. Also, it has a lot of health hacks because you cannot be sane and sexy if you're not mentally and emotionally balanced. So
awesome. Perfect. All right. So this particular video, is about how does normal sex differ from, let's say, a sacred sexual approach. And I'm just going to kind of give out a broad general overview of why somebody might even want to go down the road of say, wanting to understand sacred sexual practices. So some of the, we'll call them symptoms or problems that rise that might urge somebody to go in this direction would be lack of sensation, like they're not feeling, like they're disconnected from their body. Something else is boredom. Maybe confusion around like roles during sex, like who's dominant, who's submissive, things of that nature. A lot of these things get clarified over time. Let's see. Not feeling connected to one's partner. And I think those are pretty much the most dominant ones. But one of the things that, again, I'm going to come at this from a male perspective, which is, I'm going to talk about how I got here, is one of the things that drove me towards sacred sexual practices, one was a problem and one was a desire. The problem was that I'm very psychological in terms of how I view sex. I'm very intellectual about it. So, in other words, my imagination likes to grab sexual topics and look at it in a lot of different ways. And so in my 20s, I experimented a tremendous amount. I tried everything that I fantasized about, and I realized over time, just because I can mentally perceive something doesn't mean I should do it. So, in other words, I was constantly chasing some outcome that I wasn't getting. And so, in other words, I was full of novelty. There was so much novelty, so much choice, so much out there. And again, I grew up in what I would consider a permissive kind of environment where it was like, hey, you can express what you want, you can do what you want. So, which was good, but I had no moral guidelines. And so what I needed was, well, I'll say, so the problem for me was feeling misdirected, not knowing how to direct my energy. And also I started experiencing numbness and a lot of other sensations like disconnect from the body, etc. And this is all in my 20s. And now the other thing that happened to me is I started meditating more and doing yoga and things of that nature. And although I didn't at that point wrap them into sexual expression yet, I also knew that because sexual energy is a topic in Kundalini yoga, it's not a huge topic, but it was spoken about. And so that piqued my curiosity because of the degree of dissatisfaction. Also, I have a lot of desire for what I would consider peak energetic experiences. Beyond orgasm, right? So orgasm within a sexual context is a peak experience, but what I wanted was this process of enlightenment. That was the thing that's always driven me, and at least upon finding out that it was even a possibility. So I wanted to have visions. I wanted to be present. I wanted to feel more. I wanted more sensation. So sacred sexual practices for me were and again, I had to go down the tantric path to do this. I had to look into Teresa. I had to look into these systems in order to understand how sexual energy can be used as a tool right? This is I think what's missing.
The ultimate goal, which is the ultimate goal of all these practices, the ultimate goal, because this is the ultimate satisfaction.
Right. And I think foundationally, the one thing that's constantly overlooked when someone's looking at sacred sexual practice is they're overlooking the significance of the energy, right? This is energy you can bring life into the world with. Okay. That's huge. That's significant. So sacred sex, how that differs from normal sex is it acknowledges that energy is important. I mean, women now, they turn 16 and the doctor says, hey, you better get on birth control. It's an immediate thing, right? It's an immediate thing. They're like, oh, you got to get on birth control or you got to do this and that. And so, in other words, there's sort of this, what I would consider a little confusion around what this energy actually is. And so, anyway, the bottom line I'm getting at here is that so the sacred sexual practices is really about direct intention. So it's about intention. It's about having specific techniques and practices in which two individuals can then come together, right? So that's the one thing. It's two eyes. They do some practices separately. Then they come together and they do practices together. But the whole point is that they're present. They're present the whole time. They're present with one another. So in other words, the problems that I expressed earlier, which is lack of feeling, lack of connection, et cetera, all these are remedied by simply being intentional. And the other thing I want to say really, really quickly about sacred sexual practices is that you can read 100 different Tantra books. You can read a bunch of Karisa books. You can read a lot of these different books. And what you're going to find is every single one has a different approach. But they all share one thing in common. Like some systems like, oh, well, you should do this breath technique or that breath technique or that gazing practice or this gazing practice. And the reality is they all work. But again, why do they all work? They all work because they center you, right? So they're centering you within yourself so that then you can be centered with your partner. And then you can have more intense, ecstatic experiences because you're working with the energy, not against it. You're not wasting the energy. You're not discharging the energy. You're channeling it. And so that to me is kind of the summary of what a sacred sexual practice is versus normal sex. Normal sex doesn't channel the energy. Normal sex has no intention. Normal sex doesn't really care if you're present or not, right? Normal sex is simply chaos. It's chaos as applied during sex without any guidelines, without anything to channel the energy. And I know a lot of people get kind of bothered, like, oh no, there's practices and morality. And I'm not talking about morality. This is simply the engagement of what you've been given at birth and what's innate. So engaging your breath, engaging connection, engaging the ability to gaze. It's simply accessing what is inherent, what is innate in the human experience, and then utilizing those things in a knowledgeable, informed, present way. So in other words, I'm not talking about morality. I'm not talking about restrictions. I'm not talking about be conservative with one sex. I'm talking about utilizing your tools. So that's, to me, what makes something sacred and sexual. So
if we are going to capitalize in a very simple way to explain to the dudes, what does present mean? Let's take them to the basics. What does being present in the bedroom mean?
All right. So I'll say if a man is overly fixated on a singular body part, let's say a woman's breasts, if he's overly fixated on her breasts, is he present with her? Probably not. If a man is in his head thinking about some fantasy he has, some former partner, or even the present partner, imagining her doing something else with another man or whatever works for this person, right? He is not present. So presence is exactly as I said, it's being present with the person. So oftentimes that means making eye contact. That means being conscious with your touch, right? Like you don't have, eye contact doesn't mean you're present, right? Like I can look at someone in their eyes and be completely off in another headspace. So that's what a lot of us are not conscious about. One of the issues, at least for dudes, is I get a lot of guys who come to me who have premature ejaculation problems. I always ask them, how are you boiling out the water? How are you heating it up? Well, what do you mean? And I was like, dude, you're obviously overheated. And I was like, are you going into some sort of fantasy during sex, or are you overly fixating on someone's body part? And what that ends up doing is that creates too much heat, right? So presence doesn't generate a shit ton of heat. It's simply, like I said, what it does is it helps balance the energy within the body. So when you're present, the energy flows to where the attention goes. So where's the attention when you're present? It's in your totality. If you're in fantasy, the energy goes there, it boils out the water, and the man releases or ejaculates.
Yeah.
And that's the conversely, for those men who suffer from the inability to, get it up, then what ends up happening is oftentimes they're caught up in some insecurity, worry, concerned. In other words, they're not present.
Exactly.
And so normal sexual challenges that men deal with, and I hate to say these are normal, right? But it's normal. It's normal for men to have premature ejaculation issues. It's normal for men to have erectile dysfunction problems. Solution is sacred sexual practices. It is about being present. It is about being centered. It is about breathing. It is about understanding how energy moves. It is about making sound. It is about all those things. So anyway,
yeah, right. You are right. You are right on. So the problem I'm gonna address today, which is I get a lot, is first, when I get clients who tell me, why is this information relevant? And second is, I want to ramp up my sex life. I wanna take it to the next level. So the answer to the first question, why is this information relevant? I always tell people, imagine you have a monster in your driveway, like a Dodge Ram, with all this incredible capacity and abilities and functions and whatnot. And what you do with it is you take it to the grocery store, because you have no idea how to use it. Because do you think Steve Jobs or whoever, I'm going to mention Muhammad Ali Clay, or some people who are very famous, for Nikola Tesla, they were famous for semen retention. Do you think these people release? These people don't release, man. They just use this incredible energy. They exactly know how to use the monster that is parked in their driveway. They know how to use this energy to its full capacity. Even if you're not having sex, you use it for productivity, creativity in your sports. People who compete internationally and they have good coaches who understands about sexual energy, they will tell their athletes, you should not ejaculate before the match. The difference is, a coach who does not know anything, which is, I was playing martial arts and my coach used to tell the guys no sex before the match. But it's not about no sex before the match. It's no releasing before the match, because we used to have cage fights and he did not want the guys to release the energy before the cage fight, because this energy is the same energy. It's the same, this driving force, the same aggression. So no, it's not don't have sex, it's don't release. So there's a huge difference. And if your coach is educated about sexual energy, he will know how to inform you about this. I'm not going to go into the rabbit hole of this. It's all in our courses, by the way, so you can learn more and more about this. So the second part of the question is, I'm going to address the boredom and the monotony, and I want to ramp up. I want to take my sexual energy to the next level. And here there are too many things, too many variables. The first variable is pleasure versus orgasm. So when you are pleasure oriented, and as Akal mentioned, then you are present, because everything is pleasurable. Kissing is pleasurable. Breathing together is pleasurable. And I know some of you are rolling their eyes, but guys, believe me, I've been with guys who are like rocks in the box. And after doing these tantric exercises with them, they kind of went into a meltdown. because I let them write down on a scale from 1 to 10 how attracted to their partner they are. And after these exercises where they slightly even touch knee to knee when they are doing the breathing exercises together, or the Kriya Yoga together back to back, or any of these exercises, tantric exercises, and they were super hot, super aroused after these exercises, which is meditation, breathing. It's purely sensual and not sexual.
Yeah.
So it is important because when you slow down, you build connection. And when you build connection, you open the heart chakra. And these are not airy fairy, talk. You can just put it into test, come to our
Right.
classes and try for yourself. So it's not airy fairy. It's
Mm-mm.
just takes your mind. It's like wearing a virtual camera. Why is it okay for you guys to wear a virtual camera and use another perspective into viewing the world? You can also do that when it comes to the sexual experience.
Mhm.
So when you are pleasure oriented and not orgasm oriented, everything is pleasure. Everything is pleasure, and you feel it from your toes up to your third eye. And
Mhm.
that is why people talk about full body orgasm and brain orgasm, because you're not over fixated on your first and second chakras, which is under the belt. The energy travels because when you and your partner are on this journey, you are dedicated to giving each other pleasure in different ways. You are open to different ways. And this is the most important thing. Okay, I'm going to give you a very simple, average Joe example. Why do people go on vacations? Why do people go to these hotel rooms? Why do they, go on these exotic trips? To change scenery, to spice up their sex life, to have,
Mhm.
but this is actually not, it's a catalyst, but it's not the main thing. If the sexual process is the same, then you're perpetuating the same cycle. But the real deal is when you change the process. So that is one aspect, which is pleasure versus orgasm. Connection is a game changer, which is what we teach in our programs. A call, he has his own practices. I have my own practices. So you will be exposed to tons of practices when it comes to connection and building connection with your partner. Also, desire versus love. So
Yeah.
desire says, I distance creates desire. Love says security, and I want you to be close.
Mm.
So feeling sexy is different from feeling loved, completely different. So that's another topic for another day, but this is something to consider, that
Right.
don't believe that romantic love is going to create sexual desire all the time. Not necessarily. The
Mhm.
catalysts and the components for these two are very different. And when you understand that, you would understand why sometimes you feel so much love for your partner, but you actually don't desire them.
Yeah.
So
You
this
know,
is a game changer. I'm sorry, say that again.
what I wanted to say really quickly is that I think a lot of these ideas or these topics, um, oftentimes, I think at their foundation, like kind of what we're talking about is what precipitates, right? So what rises out of all these dilemmas. But what I think at its root is that there's a common expression, I guess, like when you're on a spiritual path, one of the things about a spiritual path is to know when you've outgrown that particular spiritual path, right? So for instance, when to say goodbye to a philosophy, or when to say goodbye to a teacher,
Yes.
or some practice, or whatever it is. Like, we have to transition things, because essentially a technique will work for some period of time and then you move on to a new technique.
Yeah.
The idea is because it's not the technique, right? It's how it augments one's consciousness. So
Yeah.
that being said, I think one of the big issues, it's not just in Western cultures, it has a lot to do with this idea of who's your teacher. I mean, sexually speaking, I mean, again, I grew up in the US. You had no teacher. There was no teacher, right? Like in the schools today, perhaps they teach you a little bit about sexual expression to some degree. I don't think that's their role, but that's not the point. What I'm getting at is, and I don't think it's religion's point either to tell you. So what I'm kind of getting at is this idea of who's your teacher. Well, unfortunately, men are going to pornography to be taught. And that's what makes normal sex is such a broad category for that reason. Whereas sacred sex to me is a little more narrow because normal sex has no bounds, right? It's infinite in its expression. Now, sacred sex also can be infinite in its expression, but it has guidelines to get to the ultimate outcome. Try having ecstatic, unbelievably powerful orgasms that last 5 to 7 minutes with normal sex. You can't, because you need the guidelines to get there. You need the guidelines to have this tremendous catharsis that's within every man's power to have, but he needs the guidelines to get there. So that's the one thing I ask everyone who's watching this video is ask yourself, who's your teacher, right? And is it time to let that teacher go? So, yeah.
And is it time to wear another virtual glass and just start viewing your sex life from another perspective? I think we're gonna wrap it up here, guys, so it doesn't really kind of drag on and on. And yeah. And if you like this video, please leave us comments and tell us your questions and tell us what do you think, and do you have a specific question? And if you think there is somebody that might benefit from this video, please share it, and share it with the people that you think that they might need it, because also that would help us spread the word about what we're teaching. And thanks again for hanging out with us, and namaste. Thanks, Akal, for being here. Thank you. I appreciate
Thank you, Amira.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.